Good morning, everyone. I set this stream up to go at 11 a.m., but I think I decided to start just a little bit early because I think I'm gonna run out the door to go to brunch. I don't always treat myself to that, but it's a nice sunny day here in the DMV, and yeah, I think I'm gonna go out and treat myself to a nice hearty meal. So. Let me make sure this is broadcasting to YouTube. First of all, thank you, J Bones. You're the first one in to look at this. Thank you for the support, the eyeballs, the comment. Thank you, J Bones. The content over here is more education related as opposed to entertainment. So I really, really appreciate those of you who come and humor me about, or should I say, humor me in terms of these topics. So let me make sure, well, you guys are looking at me, so it is broadcasting to YouTube, but let me share this over on my original channel. And then I will go ahead and get started with what I want to talk about. Okay, if you haven't, please give it a like and go ahead and shout yourselves out in the chat. Let me know who you are. And let me know if you have any questions or comments. Yeah, guys, a lot of these science streams, I'm presenting the information, I'm sharing what I know, and I'm sharing what information I've gathered online or from research by other methods or from information I've heard from other experts. But sometimes I learn from you all. Last week, I talked about the environment and electric vehicles, and Doug, shout out to Doug, he revealed some tidbits regarding electrical vehicles and the complexities of those. So I'm learning myself. I'm learning from you guys. Hopefully, we're all here learning. Okay, let's see. All right. Oops, there's a typo. As a writer, there are always typos. All right. So that was shared over there. Let me go back to my channel so I can watch the metadata roll in real time. Okay. So, guys, I'm going to play the intro. You know what I do. I'm going to play the intro and then I'm going to start. I don't want to drag this out for hours and hours because I want to go to brunch. And then I'll conclude. You guys know I don't have a super chat over here. It might be a while before I get one, but if anyone wants to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are there. So I will see you all on the other side of the intro. And then hopefully we can all learn something. Let me turn my sound down here. Let me turn my sound on. Let me slow down. All right, I'll see you guys on the other side. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. First of all, please like this stream, please share it, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and especially subscribe if the algorithm brought you here. So once again, everyone, before I jump in, I just want to thank everyone who has subscribed to this channel and who comes whenever I go live, and whoever watches the replays of this. Most of you know that creating YouTube content is a sweet science, just like boxing. And content typically falls under two categories. It's either entertainment or it's education. And people go to channels and people frequent channels um, uh, based upon what they're looking for and based upon what is pushing their buttons. And people share content and they donate based upon what they're looking for. So I appreciate the crowd who comes over here to hear these types of things. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the James Webb Space Telescope. So in this stream, we're going to go into outer space. This is going to be divided into two parts. The first part will consist of a short background of the James Webb Telescope and how I became familiar with it. And then I'm going to talk about a key individual who helped shepherd and usher this project along to the point where it is now, where it's actually capturing images of outer space. You're seeing a lot of that in the news now. You're seeing the images, but a lot of work went into getting the thing launched and functional and into outer space. Okay, so let's go back to the STEM acronym. So most of you know. If you don't know, I had to explain this to somebody. I think I had to explain to someone a couple of days ago what STEAM was. I don't remember who that was, but the STEM acronym is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. For those of you on the education side, you know that they've attempted to put an A in there for art to make it more appealing to those young people who are more artistically inclined. But the acronym is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And as I've said on this channel numerous times, that acronym is broad. There are so many fields of study underneath those four letters. My background is in the biological sciences. So I have an expertise in pharmacology and toxicology. And that research in large part involves sitting in a lab, spending lots of time in a lab, doing experiments, attempting to unlock the secrets of human health. If you listen to me talk, you have a feel for what that is. If you listen to Nicole Ali talk about her research and what she's doing, you have a feel for what that is. But a large part of science now is also devoted to looking towards the stars and looking at what's outside and what's beyond the planet Earth. So astronomy, astrophysics, aerospace, there's a ton of science that's being done in those areas. There is a ton of dollars there that are being devoted just to those areas. And there's a lot of research that's being done in those areas. And there's a huge segment of our population that has no idea of what these things are, or even that these innovations are taking place, that there are reusable rockets being generated by the efforts of Elon Musk and Richard Branson, and I think Jeff Bezos is in on it too. If you watch Ancient Aliens and the History Channel, there are people sitting down every day thinking about, okay, how can we get humans to Mars? How can we get humans beyond our solar system? That's a very, very big deal. So if you're not in on this type of thing, you can watch the History Channel. You can watch Ancient Aliens. I've been watching that a little bit myself recently. My brother was very much into that, and actually next week I'm planning to go to Arizona, and one of the activities I have on my list is to go to a Star Talk, slash a UFO watch in Arizona, because out west in Arizona and in Nevada, that's a big deal. It's rumored that there are a lot of, or there were a lot of UFO sightings out there, a lot of flying saucers viewed out there. There have been a lot of extraterrestrial sightings out in the southwest of our country. I was thinking about going to Vegas actually, to go to the Area 51 tour, but I decided not to go because of the virus floating around, and I didn't want to give it to anybody else. But I'm very fascinated by that, and I'm very interested in that right now in this season of my life. So if you're unfamiliar with outer space and the efforts underway to understand um, the research in uh, astronomy and astrophysics, you might want to go look for your local planetarium. I got involved with the David M. Brown Arlington Planetarium years ago. This is one of the remaining um, freestanding planetarium structures in our country. Dr. Ralph Carino pointed that out to me. He was responsible for me joining the Friends of the Arlington Planetarium, and I want to get some of them over here to talk about the planetarium soon. But it was through this partnership that I was able to interview Raphael Perino. If you look back in my library, there is an interview with a gentleman named Raphael Perino, who is in the aerospace industry. And I learned a lot about these fields by volunteering at the planetarium and hearing scientists from the various observatories come talk to us about their research and what they're looking at. And also, there was an individual from SpaceX who came to talk to us about Elon Musk's and that company's efforts. So there's a lot you can learn by going to the planetariums and just sitting and listening and watching the full dome shows and listening to speakers. But that was the first time I ever heard. Again, my background is in the biological sciences, so that was my first time ever hearing. Let me cue the picture up here. This is the thumbnail. I got too many pictures in here. Let me delete one out. Let's delete out the liver, as I don't need it right now. There it is. So volunteering at the Arlington Planetarium, that was my first time hearing about the James Webb Space Telescope. This is the thumbnail for this stream. And it just went up into space in December of 2021, so it's been less than a year. But they've been working on this for several years before 2021. And there have been, those of you who know about building something, building a new technology, you know that you can set a projected date, but you have to make sure that all the systems are working and all the systems are online, and you have to make sure everything, and you know that there are setbacks. So this was supposed to go up into space years ago, but they finally got it up into space in December of 2021. In my interview, let me see who commented here. Super Triz says, number one, shout out from Seattle. And he says, will be interesting to see if the rate of technological advancement increases exponentially in congruence with the exponentially more quantum computing. Yep. And he says, I think the lack of speed is a limiting factor in space exploration. It simply takes too long to reach far off destinations. Yeah. Okay, but we'll come back to that. So in my interview with Rafael Perino, I did incorporate some images of the James Webb Telescope. And I just want to show some of these images here because I think it's fascinating. You can look at this cartoon or this depiction of it here, but this doesn't give you a feel for how big the telescope is. And these images I'm about to show, they give you a feel for, relative to the size of a human being, just how big the telescope is. So I'm going to show these images really quickly, and then I'm going to jump in. So you can see two scientists / technicians there looking at something that's not very scientific, but looking at, they're working on some aspect of that, of the telescope there. And you can see just how big that, I'm a bit of a Trekkie, so I want to call that a deflector dish, but it's probably not a deflector dish. But that sensor, you can see how large that sensor is relative to them. Here's another image. Then there again, you can see those technicians there working around that sensor. So you can see how big that is there. And then you can see that's the entire telescope there. So I just wanted to give you all a feel for, it's one thing to see this thing in images, but just how big it is and how much work it's probably taken to put all the pieces together, to make sure all the systems are working, and to make sure that the thing is ready to go up into space. Because once it's up there, now you have to send technicians up into space or send robots up into space to make any repairs or make any modifications to it. Let's see. Yeah, Super Trish, thank you. It's an array. Professor Black Ops says, shout out to Dr. Dunbar in the chat. Quantum computing is going to destroy cybersecurity. Okay. Super Trish says array. Yeah, that's probably an array and not a deflector dish like on Star Trek. Okay. So just briefly, that's the telescope. And NASA has been sending telescopes up into space for years. So the predecessor to James Webb was Hubble. And again, this picture, it's one thing for us to look at this picture of Hubble right there above our atmosphere, but this doesn't tell you how big Hubble is, again, relative to the size of one of us. That thing is probably huge. So, and the predecessor to Hubble was actually Kepler. And again, size and scale, we don't know how big these devices are. Okay. So I'm going to read just some facts about James Webb, about the telescope, and what it is and what it was designed to do. I mean, I could tell you that it's designed to look at exoplanets and to other systems, but let's just take a quick look from this website to talk about what it was designed to do and its background, and who James Webb actually was, because all of these telescopes are named after somebody. Kepler was a person, Kepler was a scientist, Hubble was a scientist. If you're just coming in, please hit that like button. I know folks come in, folks jump in, they jump out, but please hit that like button if you come in. The likes are free. This website is below in the description box. This is entitled NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. So this reads as follows: the James Webb Space Telescope for scientists. The James Webb Space Telescope, NASA's next flagship infrared observatory, developed in partnership with ESA and CSA, successfully launched on December 25th, 2021. After deploying in space and alignment and calibration of the mirrors and instruments, the James Webb Space Telescope will be ready for science operations in summer of 2022. So that's why we're seeing the explosion of all the images right now, because it launched on Christmas Day 2021, and it's just starting to take the images now. I imagine for that 6 months they had to deploy everything, make sure all the systems were operational, and just make sure everything was what it should be in terms of the technologies. So that's funny. What were you all doing on Christmas Day? It was Christmas Day. I was at my mother's house, and I was being overcome by COVID-19. I had the shivers, I had fever, I had a fever. I was bundled up. I was drinking tea. So as all that was going on, the telescope was being launched into space. Please hit that like button if you're just coming in. Accessible to the worldwide scientific community, it will offer scientists the opportunity to observe galaxy evolution, the formation of stars and planets, exoplanetary systems, and our own solar system in ways never before possible. This website will offer scientists information on proposing for time on the James Webb Space Telescope, as well as the capabilities of the observatory's instruments and modes, data analysis tools and software, and news and events. So I'm going to drop this link here. In case anyone wants to go take a look for themselves. So I'm going to change the page here. Right. And this reads, unprecedented infrared sensitivity. The James Webb Space Telescope is NASA's infrared flagship observatory. The JWST is an international collaboration between NASA, the European Space Agency, ESA, and the Canadian Space Agency, CSA. Following on the technical and the scientific legacy of previous optical and infrared space observatories, such as the Hubble, Spitzer, and Herschel, JWST offers orders of magnitude improvements in sensitivity and spatial resolution from 0.6 to 28.8 micron, enabling transformative research in a broad range of science areas, including the solar system, exoplanets, star and planet formation, galactic science, galaxy formation and evolution, and cosmology. The development of the observatory is managed by the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, which I think is right here in the DMV. The development of the observatory is managed by the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and the main industrial partner is Northrop Grumman. The Science and Operations Center for JWST is the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. ST SCL brings together the scientific community to enable and maximize the science of JWST. Its staff is responsible for the development of the ground system for JWST, which includes flight operations as well as the software the astronomical community needs to plan and execute JWST observations and to analyze the data it produces. STSCI, that's STSCI, not STSCL, is also responsible for hosting the JWST data in the Mikulski archive for space telescopes. Expected to be operational for at least 5 years, with the goal of 10, JWST is a generational observatory accessible to the worldwide community via regular calls for observing proposals. Proposed JWST programs are peer-reviewed and selected via an external time allocation committee. Okay. I'm going to read this, guys, just for a background on who James Webb was. We want to learn about the science here, but we also want to learn about who these people were. I think that's important. But before I get into that, let's talk a little bit about the science. Okay, who's here? Yeah, Giyagami, welcome. He says greetings to Dr. Dunbar and all. Yep, Greenbelt, Maryland, Aquatechie. I think we're talking about Goddard. I drive by Goddard all the time to go to the Baltimore area or to the casino or to BWI Airport, or in those instances when I've done cigars with Officer Charles Faulkner. Goddard is right there on the Baltimore Washington Parkway. Engineering Cannabis says quantum computing is still far from implementation. Languages still need to be developed to communicate with quantum computers. Thank you for that, Engineering Cannabis. I always appreciate your contributions here, as I am not knowledgeable in the tech sector. All you guys, Engineering Cannabis, Aquatechie, Keep It Techie, all you guys. Okay. So that blurb I read about James Webb, the James Webb Telescope, it talked about infrared and what the telescope was actually going to be looking at. So I want to say a few words about that. So early in my content creation on this channel, I created some content on 5G. You guys know that when the pandemic first started, people were in a frenzy over 5G. So the question was, and people were correlating 5G technology with COVID-19. YouTube, this is for educational purposes only. I'm just speaking of COVID-19 in a educational context. I'm not attempting to refute or discuss the WHO or anything. This is just a educational discussion. But I'm gonna have to delete out another picture here. Sorry, I didn't mean to show that. Okay. Let me just pull this up really quickly. So we're going to put our physics hats on right now. When people were in a hysteria over 5G, and they were speculating that it was causing COVID-19, I said, well, okay, what is the technology, and could it possibly be leading to this respiratory syndrome that we're seeing? So I went back to Physics 101, and I looked into the electromagnetic spectrum. So the electromagnetic spectrum is comprised of several regions. There are gamma rays, there are X-rays, there's the ultraviolet range, there's the infrared range, and then there are radio waves. And so what I gauged from all that was that, just briefly, the 5G is in the high radio wave range. So we're not talking about ionizing energy, or ionizing waves. But the point for this is that James Webb, it's going to be conducting its research in the infrared range there. And so with these telescopes, what they've been designed to do, this one in particular, is that they've been designed to look at absorbances in other planets and in other systems. And what they can do is, based upon the spectra that they detect, they can gauge what elements on the periodic table are in those systems and in those planets. So that's what these, in addition to taking the pretty images that we've seen in the news, they're looking for specific absorbances to gauge what's in those planets and what's in those atmospheres. Aquatechy, that's right. That's what I um, gleaned from the brief research I did when people were going through that hysteria. Okay, so the telescope is one of the things it's going to do is it's going to look to identify absorbances, and based upon those absorbances, I'm just going to show this really, really quickly to try to piece everything together for everyone. Just bear with me for a moment. I should have had all these things queued up. Okay. Everything should be in alphabetical order, but it's not. I thought I had a picture of the periodic table in these. I'll just use this one. General chemistry. So based upon the absorbances and the spectra that the telescope can identify in other systems and in other galaxies. Other systems is probably more realistic in terms of distance. It can gauge what elements are there. So you might say, okay, well, and scientists are thinking about this. What planets can humans go to and potentially colonize? Well, one of the things you want to know is what's in the atmosphere in those planets. Well, that's what this data will tell us. There's oxygen there, there's water there. I'm sorry, there's oxygen, there's hydrogen, there's nitrogen, sulfur. There are these these things in the atmosphere, if there's enough, if it looks like Earth, maybe we can go there and colonize those planets. And if something happens to Earth, we can go there. Okay. I want to thank Aquatechy for the Cash App. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. So that's infrared. That's why that's important. And that's one of the things this telescope is going to be looking for. The other thing the telescope is going to be looking for is exoplanets, right? So planets, we know that there are other systems, we know that there are other galaxies out there, but the telescope is going to be looking for other planets in those systems, right? So how will the telescope know, and how will the telescope tell us that there are other planets in those systems? One is through the concept of a planetary transit. So what the telescope can look for is changes in the brightness of stars in other systems. So here's an example. So you have this star in another system, and you see that dot there. That dot there is a planet transiting in front of that star. So the telescope can take a reading, or it could take a measurement of the overall, I'll call it radiance or transmittance of that star. And once that planet moves in front of that star, that will impact the transmittance of that star, like this. And then once the planet transits, that number will go back up. So that's what that's depicting there. And this is a diagram of that. So the telescope will look for planetary transits. So that's what that will tell us. So it could take images, the pretty images you're seeing in the news of other galaxies. It can gauge what elements are on other planets, and it can tell us whether or not, or how many planets are transiting around a specific star. Super Triz says, or if there's carbon, yep, there may already be life, perhaps even intelligent life. Yep. What do you guys think? That's a good point, Super Triz. Is there other intelligent life out there? Ancient aliens, they speculate on it. They speculate that aliens have already been here. I hope YouTube doesn't mind me talking about this. Based upon the pyramids, based upon artifacts and structures they find archaeologically, based upon all kinds of things on ancient aliens, they speculate on this, Area 51. But do you guys think there's other intelligent life out there? I think based upon the total number of stars out there, yeah, there's got to be. And Aquatechy says basically watching an eclipse. Yep. Okay. So that's the telescope, and that's what it can and will do for us. I'm going to read through who James Webb was, and then I'm going to talk about a notable individual who helped get this device up into orbit, because it was delayed. It took a lot longer than it was supposed to. Engineering Cannabis says, also with the images from the telescope, we can predict weather patterns and also tectonic movements. Aquatechy says, I'm sure there's intelligent life out there, and they're intelligent enough to stay away from us. Yeah. Yeah, humans, we have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems here on this planet, on our pale blue dot. Okay, who is James Webb? James E. Webb was the NASA administrator from 1968. I'm sorry, from 1961 to 1968, and guided the fledgling space agency to triumph in one of the most impressive projects in history, landing a man on the moon. So 61 to 68, that means he was under John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Baines Johnson. Okay. Both two very celebrated presidents, but also two very controversial presidents for differing reasons. Although President John F. Kennedy had committed the nation to landing astronauts on the moon before the end of the decade, Webb believed that the space program was more than a political race. He believed that NASA had to strike a balance between human space flight and science because such a combination would serve as a catalyst for strengthening the nation's universities and aerospace industry. Webb's vision of a balanced space program resulted in a decade of space science research that remains unparalleled today. During his tenure, NASA invested in the development of robotic spacecraft to explore the lunar environment and send scientific probes to Mars and Venus, giving Americans their first ever view of the strange landscapes of outer space. As early as 1965, Webb also had written that a major space telescope, a concept that would eventually become Hubble, should become a major NASA effort. By the time Webb retired, just a few months before the Apollo moon landing in July 1969, NASA had launched more than 75 space missions to study the stars and galaxies, our own sun, and the as yet unknown environment of space above the Earth's atmosphere. Missions such as the Orbiting Solar Observatory and the Explorer series of astronomical satellites built the foundation for the most successful period of astronomical discovery in history, which continues today. As former NASA administrator Sean O'Keefe said when he announced the new name for the next generation space telescope, it is fitting that Hubble's successor be named in honor of James Webb. Thanks to this effort, we got our first glimpses of the dramatic landscape of outer space. He took our nation on its first voyages of exploration, turning our imagination into reality. Indeed, he laid the foundations at NASA for one of the most successful periods of astronomical discovery. So that's James Webb. That's who the telescope is named after. Okay, so in that passage about James Webb, I introduced the concept of an administrator. So, you can imagine that there are scientists and technicians who were involved on the ground level, designing the telescope, determining what systems would go into the telescope, projecting its launch, executing its launch, all those things. There were scientists and technicians and physicists all collaborating on that on the ground level. But going up above, you have administrators who are guiding it from a high level. And for those of you unfamiliar with how government works and how presidential administrations work, presidents appoint administrators when they come into office. So you can see Mr. Webb was the administrator under JFK and LBJ, but Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Reagan, the Bushes, President Clinton, President Obama, they all either kept the administrators of their predecessors or they appointed new administrators. So who was the administrator who helped shepherd James Webb and get it finally into space? Well, it's a gentleman named Gregory Robinson. And for those of you, I talked about this, I think, either on this channel or over on my entertainment and media channel. For those of you who want a depiction of what an administrator does, take a look at the movie The Martian, starring Matt Damon and a star-studded ensemble cast. But Chiwetel Ejiofor, who played Baron Mordo in Doctor Strange, and who played Solomon Northup in 12 Years a Slave. Chiwetel Ejiofor played an administrator in The Martian. So if you watch The Martian, you know that Matt Damon, got trapped on Mars. The crew left, and so then they had to figure out how to send the Hermes back to Mars to pick him up. Well, there was a whole host of discussions that Chiwetel Ejiofor's character and Sean Bean's character had to have to approve this thing, to figure out the logistics, and then they had to coordinate with China. So that's what an administrator does. And I'm not sure, maybe some of you all know what the training or the qualifications of an administrator entail. I don't know if they're actual scientists or if they're CEOs of companies or government officials who get into those roles, but that's what an administrator does. So the administrator for this was a gentleman named Gregory Robinson. My plus one called this to my attention because I didn't know who he was. I'm in regulatory science and the biological sciences. And it turned out to be a Black man. So this is something, for those of you who watched my second interview with Mother Eva Doyle, I published the entire interview over on my original channel. I shared it on the community tab on this channel. These things need to get out, okay? He will be remembered historically, but for a lot of the kids now, especially the young Black boys, they need to see this image. This gentleman was responsible for getting the spacecraft and getting this observatory into space. So let's read about who he is and what his background is. And there are a ton of articles online about this gentleman. I'm going to drop this link in the chat in case any of you want to keep this and bookmark it. Share this information. This needs to get out. I didn't know who he was. Okay. So this is entitled How the Son of Sharecroppers Helped Send the World's Most Powerful Telescope into Space. And that's a picture of him right there. Let's see. The NASA Deputy Associate Administrator Gregory Robinson stands with other officials to watch a spacecraft launch at Florida's Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on September 2016. So that's prior to the launching of the James Webb Telescope. So okay. NASA released the first batch of images from the James Webb Telescope this week, wowing the world with never before seen views of ancient and distant galaxies. Yeah, so if you've been watching the news, they've been talking a lot about this. If you're on Twitter, they've been sharing images. And if you're following aerospace and astronomy/astrophysics channels on YouTube, there's been a lot of content generated on these first images. The approximately $10 billion telescope was decades in the making, a partnership with the European Space Agency and the Canadian Space Agency. The Canadian Space Agency that involved some 20,000 collaborators across 29 countries and 14 U.S. states. It officially launched in December 2021 after a long string of setbacks and delays that led some astronomers to fear it might never get off the ground. Gregory Robinson wasn't one of them. The career NASA employee was brought in as director of the James Webb Space Telescope program in March 2018 to help get the project back on the rails, over the finish line, and into space. Despite the challenges, he tells Morning Edition's Steve Inskeep that he never doubted whether it would work. As we moved closer to launch, and even as we launched, I never had a concern on the outcome, Robinson says. My biggest concern was, let's get on with it already. Get to the launch site and get it off the ground. While Robinson credits the work of many others in making the telescope a success, he's received special recognition for the role he played, including being recognized as one of Time's most influential people of 2022. In his tribute, NASA astrophysicist and Nobel laureate John Mather wrote that Robinson channeled the forces of human nature and ingenuity from NASA and Congress to foreign space agencies and aerospace companies. Our teams orbit around Greg because we trust him to ask questions and understand our concerns, and respect our opinions, Mather wrote. He makes it look easy, but I can barely imagine how he does it, and I admire him tremendously for it. Robinson, who most recently served as the Deputy Associate Administrator for programs in NASA's Science Mission Directorate, has worked on several high-profile missions and held numerous leadership roles since joining the space agency in 1989. So he's been in for a while, okay? And I misspoke about his title. He wasn't the administrator when the craft went up into space. But Robinson, the ninth of 11 children born to tobacco sharecroppers in rural Virginia, says he didn't exactly grow up dreaming about space other than watching the moon landing. I often refer to Webb as our Apollo moment today, he adds, but space was not high on my list. Okay. So I've heard a lot about this. Football was Robinson's ticket to college and space. Danville, Virginia is less than 5 hours away from agency headquarters in Washington, D.C., but Robinson says his childhood was a long way from NASA. Under the sharecropping system, a landowner will allow people to farm their land in exchange for a portion of the crops produced. Robinson describes it as a product from slavery through Jim Crow that still continues today. There are lots of nuances there. Who keeps the books, who alters the books. And as you go through that process, there are winners and losers, he says. And it keeps the losers tied to the farm so they can never get away to go and do other things. Robinson, who began his education in a racially segregated elementary school, recalled to the Washington Post that his teachers would tell students they could do anything they wanted if they had an education, which appealed to him because he wanted to get out of Danville and have a better life. He tells Morning Edition he really enjoyed math and science and had a knack for those subjects. He also had a knack for football, which earned him a scholarship to Virginia Union University in Richmond. I thought I was a top-notch football player, and for my high school in my county and my district, I probably was, he says. But when I got to college, the real athletes showed up, and that was a big difference. But it was really my ticket to get to college. And you see that with a lot of individuals who go on to do other things. Sports is their ticket to get to college. So athletics are important in several ways. I see Alonzo Hall, the All-Star Advisor, has joined us. Alonzo, thank you for stopping through. He wanted to major in engineering, but Virginia Union didn't offer it. You see that with a lot of HBCUs. Oftentimes you have to go to a PWI to transition into a more robust program. They did have a dual degree with Howard University, so he ended up graduating with degrees in both math and electrical engineering. It was during Robinson's time at Howard that NASA landed on his radar. He recalls having friends who interned at the Goddard Space Flight Center in nearby Maryland and really enjoyed it. And while he didn't originally intend to work in the industry, he eventually made his way to NASA too. Once you walk through the gate and get started, the bug bites you fast, and the bug never stops biting, he says. There's a picture of President Biden talking with Gregory Robinson and two other officials. His upbringing informed his work at NASA and whatever he does next. Robinson has worked on many space flight and space shuttle missions over the years and held notable leadership positions, including as the Deputy Center Director at NASA's John H. Glenn Research Center and NASA Deputy Chief Engineer. And he's applied lessons from his childhood to even his most high-tech projects. Robinson says he learned a lot living through the process of school desegregation, including how to work with many different types of people. One of the things I learned is not everyone is bad who doesn't look like me, he says. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of good folks who don't look like me, and we have a lot of things in common. He also credits sports with teaching him the importance of leading, following, and being a team player. Both of those lessons really helped shape me early on, he says. And of course, a really good, strong family was important as well. Robinson's latest mission was to get the Webb telescope to launch and through commissioning. With that done, what comes next? He laughs that he's worked himself out of a job and says he's considering retirement. Of course, I have a lot of knowledge and experiences, life and professional, that I still want to share and increase impact across the globe. Robinson adds, so I still plan to do some things, but it's time to get to the next phase of life. So that's that. That is in the description box below. I'm going to drop the link in the chat right now. I think this is an important share for the reasons I described here on this channel in numerous instances, but also in my discussion with Mother Eva Doyle. These images of us need to be out there more and more prevalently. Let's see. I'm at an hour. I'll drop the link in case anyone wants to come up and say some words on this. I'm pretty much done. I don't have much more to say. Does anyone want to come up and say anything about this? I'll drop the StreamYard link briefly. I want to get off and run out the door, but some of you guys are here watching, so I'll drop the link in case anyone wants to come up and say something. Okay. Thank you, Aquateki, for once again for the generous Cash App. Again, if anyone wants to donate something, that information is here. I don't have a super chat here. It'll probably be a while before I do. This is more education than entertainment. So that by itself weeds out some folks. We are joined by Professor Black Ops. What's going on, Professor Black Ops?
What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, my mic is struggling. No, I think we talked about this in the last stream, and I'm with you. I think it's still a disarray from Star Trek, but I think these talks, especially more young people, because that's what really got me into STEM. Just seeing those shows, space shows, and just data, and that's how I got into computers. Every Star Trek and every movie has a killer computer system, so I
Yeah,
think we need to be pushing that and that's why I try to get especially young black men in there and let's get into STEM. And I just think we were talking about Carl Sagan, all that helps you think differently, help you get out of your environment, helps you get out of where you at, and you just start thinking at a different level and a different thought pattern. So I just wanted to bring up and just give you a shout out for that.
yeah. Professor Black Ops, I talked about my time, and I want to get back to this. The only reason I know about this stuff because the STEM acronym is broad. You know that it's broad.
Just huge, just
The only reason I know about this stuff is because I volunteered at the David M. Brown Arlington Planetarium here in Northern Virginia, and that for young people, if you're watching this and you know some young people in your circle, just by going there and watching a full dome show, you just automatically start as a young person start thinking, oh, there are exoplanets, there are we have reusable rockets, we're trying to send people to Mars. That automatically opens your mind up to other things, and it's for those of you who are familiar with the DMV. You have Prince George's County. That's where most of the Black families live. I mean, there are Black families in other counties, but I try to get the word out. But it's hard to get people to come from that county over to it. But getting the kids to come over is really, really important. Yeah, yeah.
And just like you said, just getting involved and getting kids to do that and think differently. And the guy was in there was talking about quantum computing. I think that's a big leap. But even before then, with Amazon and me and engineering was, I don't need quantum computing. I can spin up 1,000 computers and have them work on something in parallel before we get to quantum computing. There's just so many things with technology and how it's built, right? I think quantum computing is at the top of the pyramid. But on Maslow, you can do a lot of eating at the bottom with 1,000 VMs. I can run a lot of calculations and do a lot of wonderful, things for computing and security and all that before we even get to quantum computing. So,
yeah. Akweseki says, accurate description of PG County. Well, Akweseki, from what I hear, the gentrification is pushing out. So, in 10 years, PG County might not look like what it looks like right now. But as you know, for now, that it's known as the richest county in America for Black people. And since before we go, I'm going to say, since I have one of the tech guys here, I'm going to do, after I get back from vacation, I do plan I should do an open stream just so you guys can come up and talk about whatever. I think that's good for everybody. But just keep in mind, everyone, that this device, this observatory, it's being run off of all computer systems. I mean, and me saying that probably doesn't do it justice, but there are not people up there taking the readings. These are all technology systems that are working. So that the device can operate and get the data back to us. So, their careers in the technologies that run the device, but also in the software and the systems that are allowing those different aspects of the telescope to integrate and get the data back down to us.
Yeah, AWS they run, and even Azure. AWS has a satellite data center, especially to get that type of data, stream it back and do calculations on it. So they actually offer that as a service if you want to spin up your own satellite and stream data back and be able to take that data and calculate it. Like one scenario, real quick, they brought up is They thought it was some kind of meteorite was going around in the orbit, but the orbit wasn't quite right. They figured out it was a planet by it because the circle or the obelisk wasn't quite right. So they figured out something's behind it, pulling on it with gravitation. That's all machine learning and artificial intelligence taking those readings and doing those calculations. Like that orbit's not right. Something's pulling on it, right? So like you said, all that's computer science, quantum physics. Shout out to engineering Canada, machine learning, artificial intelligence. All that plays a part into reading all that data at a high calculation.
Right. And so this is what we're talking about, and this is what's talked about when it said that certain people are going to be left out of what's coming. This is it right here. And there's going to be more of this as we go forward.
Yeah, they call me the dark Sith of the tech bros. 30 million jobs are about to be exploded, about to be taken out with artificial intelligence, machine learning. You seeing at your grocery store every time you go in, there are less checkouts. So right, you see it, and you're a little older like me. You used to be 1,000 AAs that used to be in a typing pool. They don't exist anymore. So that's coming. That's coming for each one of those jobs. It's coming.
Yeah. I want to thank Constructive Consultant. Thank you for the Cash App. Much appreciated. Let's see. I want to read what Engineering Cannabis. He says, lots of AI and mathematical algorithms collecting and computing data with sensors. Yep. And he also says, this is how 5G is utilized to collect the data and transfer it immediately to compute and predict outcomes. Wow.
Yeah, that's for like you said, for autonomous cars. That's really, I think, what 5G, because they got to be closer because they're taking more data. So no, he's 100% correct on that. And a lot of people don't realize if you Google a Spectrum, they're actually making your cable box is going to be split in half, where it can actually become a hotspot for people driving by, because there's so much computer power in there now you can't use it. So they want to make it a hotspot so people walking and driving can jump on your cable box and use that as a hotspot to get data too.
Wow. Okay. Sheed, thank you for passing through. We here.
Shout out to Sheed. That's my man. Yeah, always support. Shout out to Sheed.
Yep. Aquateki says the confluence of multiple disciplines. Yep. And technologies. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, Professor Black Ops, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, like we talked about, I think technology, movies, and that type of thinking, and like you say, helping out and getting kids to think in a different perspective. Because like you said, if you're not thinking that perspective coming up, you're going to be shut out of this new economy real quick. That's all I got. Yeah, go check me out, Professor Black Ops. Just Google me. You'll see me on there. Dr. Dunbar was gracious enough to interview me, and I'll be jumping on his panels all the time. Shout out to Dr. So you just Google me.
Did I make you? Yeah, you have a wrench. Yeah, so
yeah.
If you wanna,
I drop it in there.
Yeah, panel.
But like you said, shout out to you. I never thought of Carl Sagan. You were correct. Was an influencer on me. I used to love that. Billions and billions. That wasn't as things. Billions and billions of stars. I used to love that when I was younger. So shout out to Carl Sagan. So
Professor Black Ops. I mean, as you say that, I mean, this is why. Let's see, Super Trez and Aquateki, I just made you moderators too. You guys are, you guys come in and support. Same thing, Constructive Consultant. That's why messaging and imaging matter, because the things that we look at and the things that we're exposed to, especially at a young age, that kind of shapes what you're looking at, and it shapes the trajectory of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The weird thing is I was on a panel, young guy 22, he goes, I was the only Black person that graduated with computer science, and that just really hurt my heart. He said, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I go, dude, I'm here, keep it techie, engineering cannabis, like the tech, but for him to say that in 2022, he felt alone. That really pierced I yelled at him. I'm like, dude, you can always reach out to me. Now I'm old, I'm a little late on the emails, but I'm gonna get to you. If you got anything, and you'll like this time, I told my Rolodex is deep. I could call somebody, man. If I don't know, I could call somebody. So that kind of hurt my heart. So like you said, imaging and there's so many people out there, and I like these channels. So sometimes I get a little upset when we talk about relationships and there's 1,000 people in a box, and I come to your beautiful channel and we got what, 8, 10. That kind of hurts my heart a little bit, but we're gonna keep working and keep growing and keep grinding. So
yeah, we're gonna grow it. We're gonna grow it. I have some ideas of I have some other things in the pipeline, and that involves having more open panels with you guys, and just letting you guys go. But yeah, we're gonna grow it. We're gonna grow it. So, all right. Anything else? All right. Well, in that case, I'm gonna shut down. Thank you for coming through. All right, everyone. I am going to shut this down. I'm gonna give my little parting blurb here. Yeah, if you don't share this stream with someone, share what you learned here. Share Gregory Robinson. Share his story with someone. Share what you learned about the James Webb Telescope. Start having those discussions in your circles, because this is what's going on, and people who understand this stand to benefit. The kids who understand this stand to benefit this. So if you don't share this stream or share this video, at least share what you learned here. Aquateki says, I'm humbled. I think that's for being a moderator. Well, thank you for your support and for your donations, your generous donations. Again, this is, you guys know, here's Professor Black Ops' channel, for those of you who are interested. Red team, blue team. That's a cybersecurity reference there. Again, those of you who are familiar with content creation, you know that it either falls under entertainment or education. In some instances, you can blend the two, but yeah, you're going to have specific crowds that are going to triage and segue into either the entertainment or the education. So folks really love that entertainment. So everyone, I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to try to run out and grab some brunch. If the algorithm brought you here, please definitely subscribe to this channel. Subscriptions are free. I'm definitely trying to grow it. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. That information is here. The link is below. There's a 2-paragraph greeting, and thank you to everyone who signed up thus far. One of the persons who signed up is Toya the Tutor. She just joined the chat. Hello, Toya the Tutor. Leo season? Yeah, Leo season. There's a 2-paragraph greeting there, and there's a subscription button at the bottom. It's really easy. I promise I won't give your information away to a third party. In addition to being a YouTube content creator, I'm also a writer. So I think the people who have signed up thus far have enjoyed my first 2 offerings. So that's there. And I'm going to piggyback off of something that Gregory Robinson said. Athletics do teach you a lot about life and how to succeed later on, even if you don't end up at one of the major Division I schools or in one of the pro sports. Only a small percentage of kids do that. The rest of us end up in some other career or starting a business or in the military. But that's what my book project is about. It's about what athletics teach you at a young age and how that can propel you going forward in your life. That's my book project right there. The Engineers, a Western New York basketball story. And at some point, sometime soon, I'll probably do something here talking about what Gregory Robinson talked about and how sports can help propel you forward in your life, because that's in large part what my book is about. You learn a lot of tools. You learn a lot of life tools through sports. So there's a description of the book. It's a 2-parter. I have to sit down and finish editing part 1 to my satisfaction before sending it off to a professional editor. There's a description of the book, parts 1 and 2. That's a key character in the book right there, the late Dr. Kenneth Leon Jones. And there's a ton of promotional content there at the bottom in the form of video and print. I have another video set to go up on my sports channel this week, and I'm working on finalizing another essay this week. It's not an essay per se, but it's going to show you and it's going to highlight the 30 to 40 individuals that I interviewed for this project. So I'm going to give them some spotlight and just give everyone else a feel for how much work has gone into this project. So I think it'll be really cool. But there's a comment section at the bottom of this page. I've enabled a comment section there, so you can take a look. And should I say, if you take a look, please leave a comment. Let me know if you think this is cool. Let me know if you think this is crap. I don't think you'll think that, but leave me a comment. Let me know if you can't wait for the project to reach its completion. Just let me know what you think. YouTubing and blogging, it's all about engagement with the audience. So with that, I'm going to wrap this stream up. Again, thank you to those who have supported today. Thank you to those of you who have supported in the past. And thank you to those of you who will support in the future. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay safe out there. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Next week, look for me to do something on UFOs and looking at the stars, because I will be on the West Coast next week, and I signed up to go to a UFO Star Talk in Arizona. So look for something like that. I think that'll be cool. So everyone enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.